Gators Breakdown episode 93 is ready to go. And after the big win, it is time to shift focus to Kentucky. I am your host, David Waters, on here on Gators Breakdown. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And my co-host, Joe Vizzi. You can find Joe on Twitter at JoV_GatorsPod. Joe, man, we met up Saturday. We had some fun tailgating, and then we went inside the stadium, and then we saw, one of the best plays, if not the best play in Gators football history.
Whew, that's all I could say, man. I mean, we talked immediately after the game was over. It was tough. I just no words, man. Just no words. And I tell you what, that stadium seemed like it was a little bit louder than it was for the Callaway play 2 years ago. I don't know if it was you, or me, but that stadium seemed to be a little more energized after that play than it did 2 years ago. So I don't know if there was maybe a few more people there this year, which is very possible. But it seemed that place was a buzz, and it was nice to see the Swamp alive for the home opener, man. As you know, and everybody out there knows, the state has gone through so much over the last week and a half. We both have, David, your family, my family, we were all affected by the hurricane, and most of the players' families were affected by the hurricane. So it was just a win for the state of Florida too, so I was just so happy for just the entire state and all of Gator fans everywhere in the state of Florida for how that ended. But it just another chapter in the storied history of Tennessee versus Florida.
Yeah, and definitely one Tennessee fans don't want to remember, these two trips to the Swamp in a row, and you get beat by heartbreakers, and Tennessee is giving Florida some good games lately. Going back to Will Muschamp's 10-9 victory, and then the Callaway touchdown, and then last year's 38-28 loss to Tennessee, and then coming back this year, and Florida gets on the right side of the victory. Tell you what, this has been while the teams aren't what they were in the 90s, you can't tell by these games lately. These games have had so much hype between the two fan bases. They've been going at each other, and you've seen all the social media stuff and Tennessee fans peeing on statues and Florida.
I was going to say that. I was sitting next to a pair of Tennessee fans, and I told them as soon as that play happened, I said, you know what? You shouldn't have did that. Timmy is ordained, and you shouldn't have pissed on a statue. That kind of stuff will happen to you.
Yeah, and shame on some Florida players for shooting birds and grabbing crotches and stuff toward the Tennessee fan base as well. I know it's, that's what fan bases get, and they can get under your skin, but you're representing the school in the stadium at that point. So, hopefully this can get cleaned up a little, but emotions get the best.
And Tennessee fans were throwing stuff at Florida players, man. So, I mean, that was caught on video by a Vols fan, actually.
Yeah, I know. It's just, I don't see much place for grabbing crotches and towards people.
Yeah, and Jets fans got mad at Marshawn Lynch yesterday for dancing on him. So, I mean, and Jets players. So come on. I mean, if you don't want people to dance on you, then don't lose.
Oh, I don't mind the dancing. I don't mind the dancing. The other stuff. So.
I get you.
Yeah, I get you. Before we dive in here, remember you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes. Bill Sykes and I last night. You can get our reaction from the game. So check that one out if you haven't checked it out yet. But you can find it on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Search on those sites or get the links by following Gators Breakdown on Twitter and on Facebook at Gators Breakdown. Find us on iTunes and rate and review the show if you don't mind. So, Joe, we know Mondays, Matt usually has his press conference, and said today, the thing I took away from it, I try and take away just kind of one thing that we can bring to the show with his presser today. And he said they will continue to tweak some things on offense. Granted, I know that was kind of Captain Obvious there. Don't get me wrong. But I think it was apparent what the original tweaks were versus Tennessee. And I mentioned this last night. It was get the ball out of Frank's hands quickly. I thought that helped Frank's get kind of comfortable, get some confidence. But my big worry about that is hopefully they aren't holding back from some downfield throws. Now, some of this will be determined by what the defense gives you. But I've said this before, and I'll say it again: dictate what you do. Don't let the defense dictate you. So, but here's the thing. I understand the difficulty in that when you're trying to protect a young quarterback. So after the Tennessee game, hopefully there is some growth from Franks and trust from the staff to build this offense. And I went back and looked at the calls on first down. And that's big for me in valuing the trust of a quarterback. Do you give him some opportunities to pass on first down, especially this staff because they're so textbook about trying to stay on schedule. So out of 23 first down plays, there were 13 called pass plays and 10 rushing plays. So I point that as a sign of trust. Yes, they were short throws, but the coaches trusted Franks to get a drive going or to continue a drive after picking up a first down. So, hopefully these short type of plays aren't holding Franks back mentally. There was some play calls that could have went downfield. There was a third down conversion where Frank settled to hit Tony. Tony made some guys miss, and he got the first down. But if Franks would have read deep first, he had Dre Massey on a wheel route wide open for a big play. So there's going to be some times where Franks has to trust himself, trust his teammates, whether it be the offensive line to give him some time, running backs to pick up blockers, or his wide receivers to hit a big play. So that was talking about tweaks and kind of trust and everything going along with this offense. I like what I saw on first down, them wanting to throw more than they run. It shows me some trust there. But I just don't want it to hold back Franks. And I want him to trust himself, and I want the coaches to trust him that hopefully it doesn't hold the offense back.
Yeah, David, that first drive was 7 minutes long. And unfortunately it ended in the red zone with 2 false starts, back to back.
2 games in a row.
It forced Florida to kick a field goal. So, the plays were there, and I put this on Twitter and we talked about it before the show. I think Doug Nussmeier called a very good game. I really do. I think that was a good bounce back game for him. The plays were there. It's not his fault that the turnovers, the Frank's interception, that was a horrible throw. Malik Davis obviously could have put the Gators up 20-3 in the early fourth quarter. P. Ryan with that horrible fumble that he had. The running back couldn't block a stiff wind from touching Felipe Franks in that game. But the plays were there. I think Felipe Franks had more time, obviously, than he did against Michigan. Obviously, Tennessee's defense isn't that great. But still, I think the plays were there. I think Felipe Franks overall played a pretty good game, especially obviously in the fourth quarter. I think he had some really nice throws. And it's good to see. They always say that your biggest improvement is from the first game to the second game. And I saw improvement. I did see improvement. I saw improvement with the play calling. I saw improvement with the throws that Franks did make. I saw improvement on the defense, especially the defensive line. They were in Dormady's face for pretty much 3/4 of the game. So I was impressed by that. But obviously the defense got gassed, David. We talked about this after the game. Defense was gassed again in the fourth quarter. And it's just a shame that it's kind of been the storyline for years, and that needs to end. Got Kentucky coming up, man, and I got some stats that'll make you sick to your stomach that I think Florida really needs to worry about. But as far as Franks, I think he's coming into his own. We did a Periscope pregame,
yep.
and I did say this could be Frank's coming out party. And what do you know? He's the hero of the game. And I just am very, very happy to see his growth just from one game to the next. And I look forward to seeing him 6-7 games from now.
Yeah, hopefully the big play is a spark. Like I said, it was a lot of short passing plays, and I think it was just the coaches knowing what they saw from the offensive line against Michigan.
Isn't this eerie, David? Isn't this eerie how this reminds you of 2015? Well, we talked about this with you, Bill, and I about how just the the 63-yard play, and Franks is a redshirt freshman. Greer was a redshirt freshman. Cleveland is coming into his own the way Callaway did. It's just very eerie how this could spark, Florida. After this, obviously, Greer kind of took off, and this could be it.
Well, and remember the very next week, albeit it was a home game, so it made a little bit easier there. But they followed it up a week later with a blowout versus Ole Miss. So hopefully the same type of things happen here, and it is the spark that this offense is looking for, and can keep it going.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But another thing, and I guess going kind of to the next opponent and even further in the season just a little bit, if this short, quick passing game becomes the main part of this offense when opposing defenses get tape and adjust to it, hey, look, maybe the passing game can then start to test deep more often. If Florida can get the quick game figured out and start having success Well, with that, then maybe defenses will have to play closer to the line of scrimmage. Granted, they kind of are anyway with this Florida offense because they're not necessarily too afraid of it. But if Florida starts having success, then it's going to happen even more. So maybe, then Florida's in a better position to start using Frank's big arm, if this short passing game takes off.
David, I really looked to what Tyree Cleveland said today about tempo. Did you hear that quote?
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah,
he
yeah,
said,
yeah. I retweeted it.
yes,
Yep.
that Florida's offense plays better in tempo. And Florida, McElwain preached all summer about the speed at Florida is back.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that in a direct message today about how you know what? If you play to the talent that you have,
Yep.
if Florida is not going to play pro style, pound and ground and pound offense, or spread it out. Use Florida speed. Use the tempo offense. If that's going to win ball games, then that's what you play with. And if that's what Tyree Cleveland thinks is going to work for Florida, and I think most people with two eyes can see that Florida's played better with tempo. So let's do it.
I agree, and that really does speak to the Florida speed. And I did have my worries about this offensive line. I didn't think they'd get manhandled like they did against Michigan. That was still a surprise a little bit, but I still had my questions. But and we talked about it. If where Florida has an advantage, and where we thought they had an advantage was with the wide receivers. And yeah, it would be great if they used some tempo, not let a defense figure out what they're trying to do, not let a defense get adjusted. The defense has all the time in the world right now to line up exactly where they want to line up, disguise their blitzes, disguise their coverages, because this Florida offense is so downtrodden slow that they don't snap the ball till 2 seconds, 1 second left on the clock. The defense knows that Florida's going to run down the play clock. They can kind of pin their ears down back a little bit. They know Florida has to snap the ball within those 1, 2, or 3 seconds. So it's kind of easier for a defense to figure out where and what Florida's going to do. So, looking at those things, you're right. And get some tempo, spread a defense out, and go from there, and take your chances. I think we know if they want to line up, like you said, Joe, and try and run down the team's throat, it's not going to work. And if you want to talk about Florida speed, then use Florida speed.
Yep. And this is a scary stat, David. Florida ranks 106th after 2 games in third down conversions.
Ooh.
That has to change.
Yeah.
Florida is converting on 33% of their third down conversions, third down attempts, 27 attempts and 9 first downs. That's not good enough, David. That's not good at all.
No,
and that needs to change, man, because Kentucky is only allowing their opponents to complete 30% of their third down conversions. Kentucky ranks 32nd in the country with 13 first downs allowed on 43 attempts. That's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and we'll definitely dive into Kentucky and see what they bring to the table for these Gators. And there's a third down stat right there. Looking at that one, that's a pretty good one. Joe, so yeah, we'll kind of quickly. Any more thoughts about the Tennessee game? I know I got a question I wanted to ask you that I was going to bring up to you with this podcast. We're going to look at the one positive we can take away and the biggest worry we can take away after 2 games. But one quick review of the Tennessee game again. Is there anything else that stuck out in your head?
What stuck out in my head was that kind of little what McElwain alluded to, that the players just kind of went out and played in the fourth quarter. It's almost like they had nothing to lose, and they just played free, and instead of worrying about making mistakes. And I think that stuck out to me. And if that's the case, I mean, these guys just need to let talent take over and just go play. Stop worrying about what could go wrong and just start worrying about, what you can do right, and I only want Florida players, especially against a team like Kentucky going forward, against a defense like that is, if playing free is going to allow you to capitalize like you did in the fourth quarter, do it. Florida and Tennessee had 37 points in the fourth quarter. Think about that, David. 37 points in one quarter. So it's there. The recipe is there. It happened. Build on it. So whatever you got to do, if you got to play free, play free.
Yeah. Quick, and another thing before I ask you, Kadarius Toney. Quick, I think it's already proven he can be Florida's best playmaker already. I think in 2 games, I mean, I hate to put it, the first game we didn't get to see much of it. We wanted to see more. We got to see a little bit more, but every time the ball was in his hands, he made something happen.
Yeah. And he made a lot happen. I'm pretty sure that defender for Tennessee, number 12, his
Ooh.
ankles are still stuck in the ground at Florida Field. That was just straight up nasty. And McElwain actually alluded to this in his press conference today. He said that, Tony's played quarterback pretty much his entire life.
Yeah.
So moving him to a position like wide receiver, he just doesn't want to overload him with too much information and cause him to, overthink or overprocess and kind of screw up things. But Tony is electric. We talked about him from the spring game, how he looked and all through fall camp. And now we're kind of seeing it and seeing him grow. But, shades of Percy Harvin, just electric. When the ball is in his hands, positive things happen. And we saw Percy Harvin do that as a true freshman when Florida won the national championship in 2006. And if Tony's going to be that guy, scrap the wide receiver thing, scrap the running back thing, just call him, an athlete. Just give the ball to him, whether it's jet sweeps or pitches or, shovel passes or anything. Just give the ball to Tony because good things are going to happen.
Yeah, and one more takeaway because through the first 2 games before we go to our positive and biggest worry to that, where is Dre Massey and where are the tight ends? It kind of seems the middle of the field is a little, not being used right now. But Goolsby, I know he had a little bit of injury, and it's only been 2 games. But I think not Gamble. Oh man, his name's just, I know Deontay Lewis had a
Deontay Lewis. Khalif Jackson.
No, the other tight end. Wow, his name is escaping my mind right now. But anyway, only 2 tight end catches there, and no Dre Massey right now. I know Frank's forced a double pass to him in double coverage at one point, probably his worst throw of the game besides the interception. But just got hopefully those guys, in those 2 positions can start showing up better for the Gators. So Joe, yeah, I did present this question to you right before we came on. I wanted you to think about it a little bit. Through the first 2 games, what's the one positive you like so far, and what's your biggest worry moving forward?
The positive I like is that Franks is showing that he could be the future for Florida football. We've talked about ad nauseum, man, for the last, many years. Can Florida get a quarterback? We saw Will Grier, and then obviously the air was let out of our balloons and our parade got rained on and somebody peed in our Cheerios, man, with Will Grier. So, we're all holding our breaths, but I really think that Felipe Franks could be the guy, especially for the next couple of years. I mean, he's got 4 years eligibility, man. He's a redshirt freshman. So, if he's good, the guy, I mean, the sky's the limit. So that's my positive. And the negative, David, I just spoke on it, man. The 3rd down conversion rate. I mean, that's not good. You're not going to win the SEC East, the ACC Atlantic, the Coastal, the Pac-12 North, Pac-12 South. You're pretty much not going to win any division in the Power 5 conference with a 33% 3rd down conversion rate, and that's got to change. Florida has to convert. Obviously, like I said, the 2 false starts, man, put Florida in like a 3rd and 20, and basically they were forced to just run and let Eddie kick a field goal, but that's something. Those are opportunities that you can't lose. You can't miss out on those 3rd down opportunities. And I really think that needs to improve, or else this is going to be a very bad season.
Yep. Moral Stevens was the tight end. There we go. So thanks to
Stevens. Okay, thank you.
Rhino Gator threw that to me.
Well, he's barely played it all the last 2 years, so we forgot who he was.
So through the first 2 games, my positive right now so far for me was finding a way to win this game. After the Michigan game, there was noise in the system, fair or unfair. Hurricane Irma comes through the state, and then the Northern Colorado game gets canceled. The team has family and friends in the path of the storm. rightfully their minds should have been in other places besides football. So the hurricane rolls through, and now wondering if the Tennessee game would be played in Gainesville, and it was decided it was. So now you're preparing without a tune-up opponent. You thought you'd have to work some kinks out. Finally, game day comes and you start okay, but you have to settle for some field goals. The defense started well, but it eventually got worn out late in the game. Franks does the interception, and Tennessee's only down 3 points. The team didn't back down, and the coaches trusted Franks enough, trusted the team enough to make something happen with 9 seconds left of a tie ball game, and the rest is history. So with everything that went on since the Michigan game, the hurricane, and Tennessee having all the momentum late in this game, the Gators found a way to win this game. So that's my biggest positive right now. Of the first 2 games and kind of the season so far, of course, is just finding a way to shove all that other stuff out and come prepared and get a win against Tennessee. Now, my biggest worry is the depth of this defense, especially at linebacker and safety. Now, I think we knew there was a worry coming into the season, and it's kind of coming to fruition right now. In total defense, the Gators are 100th in the nation in giving up 437.5 yards per game, 106th in the nation in rushing at 199 yards a game, 78th in passing yards per game with 238.5 yards per game there, 78th in scoring defense with 26.5 points per game. So now we have seen how opportunistic this defense is in the
Those are in chunk plays, though, David. A lot of those stats are in chunk plays.
I was going to go there. Yeah, the chunk yardage, and that's another stat I want to look up, is that's what's killing Florida right now. It's these big chunk plays that are really killing Florida. The explosive plays. That's really, really what's killing them right now. It's not teams, they're not really driving on Florida. It's just these big plays that are killing Florida right now. So now we've seen how opportunistic they can be in the red zone and also creating interceptions and pick sixes. They're also tied for 22nd in the nation in tackles for loss, averaging 8 a game, so 16 total in these first 2 games. So they need some help from the offense in the fourth quarter alone. Tennessee's drives, 2 plays of the drive where C.J. Henderson had to pick 6, and that was 37 seconds. Then 7 plays, 49 yards, missed field goal. 5 plays, 80 yards, touchdown. 2 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. 8 plays, 31 yards, a field goal. That was almost 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. Tennessee had the football. So, while this defense was expected to take a step back, I don't think it would look as bad as it does if the offense could stay on the field and help these guys a little bit. So, if they could get rid of some chunk yardage plays, the offense can help them out by putting some drives together. I don't think they'd have as much opportunity for the opposing offense to do this to them.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Missed tackles, man. Missed tackles. Woof. And Mac alluded to it in his press conference today. That's something that he said that's an EDD, an everyday drill. So I just don't know. Somebody actually had the cojones. I don't know who it was to ask him. Chauncey Gardner has shied away from some tackles the last couple of games. And that's concerning, man. When you're starting strong safety is shying away from the run, that makes you nervous, David, because Marcel Harris would never shy away from a hit, and that's whose position he's taking up. So, if you're missing out on those big run stopping plays coming down in the box from the safety position, I mean, you might have to look elsewhere, because Chauncey Gardner is as good as he's been in pass coverage. Really needs to learn that that's only half the position of safety. You're not a cornerback anymore. You're a safety, and you are pretty much like the last line of defense for the defensive line and the linebackers. So, if he's going to shy away from tackles and he's not going to play the run the way it needs to be played, then maybe he does need to move back outside and move somebody that will stop the run back to safety. But these
depth right now is hurting. Here you go, stick back.
It is Quincy Lenton,
right?
MacArthur Burnett. I don't know, one of these guys that have been there for a couple years. Juwan Taylor, another guy. But Max spoke on it too today. Brad Stewart is a guy that's going to have to step up and play more. Mac did say though that Duke Dawson was injured, but Duke quickly tweeted out as soon as McElwain said that, I will be back for Kentucky. So, I like how that happened. He wasn't hearing none of that.
It is
So
twice now because a couple weeks ago the whole
yes,
Goolsby thing is kind of the same way.
yeah, that was last week. That was last week. Yeah, that was for the press conference last week. But so I don't know if Mac's getting bad information from the training staff, but these guys want to play, and having Duke Dawson back, obviously David's going to be awesome. Having him get injured, especially early in the game, really hurt the secondary. Duke Dawson's a guy that's not only great in pass coverage, but he's a voice of reason out there, and he's the guy that can get the young guys, to follow behind him. Man, CJ Henderson, how good is he going to be, David, in the next year or
Man.
two? I
Yeah.
mean, if he looks this good 2 games into a college career, David, I can't wait to see him as a junior. He might be he's looking already like he could be a first round draft pick, right? In the
Yeah.
next 3 years.
I mean, maybe even by season's end. I mean,
I mean,
and a lot of these players say, once you played your first game, you're not a freshman or you're not a rookie anymore. But granted, we know that that's them saying the right things to the media. But
it
right
is.
now, you're right. You can see the inklings of why we were so excited for these
Yes.
young guys coming in. We
Yes.
knew they had the talent, and we knew they were going to get thrown into the fire. Yeah, and you know what? But yes, they can work on some tackling right now. But for their
Yes.
main job that they're supposed to be doing, they're doing pretty well.
I mean, I don't know what it is about us, David, but we are DBU. I'm sorry, we are. This school. There's nothing that could turn me away from absolutely believing that this school is DBU, because we don't we reload. We don't. It's just like it's a turnstile at the cornerback position. It really is, and it's crazy how that just goes to show the talent in Florida, in the state of Florida, at defensive back, especially down in South Florida.
Yeah.
That Florida just keeps replenishing at that position, and it's so good to see these guys get such good playing time this early, because next year, 2018, a lot of people have looked to that season as kind of Florida's signature year, as being the most experienced they've been since McElwain's been there, so to say.
Yeah.
And if these guys are playing like this now, imagine how lights out these DBs are going to be next year.
And not only that, now I kind of hate to bring this up with the suspensions, but you're also if you and quickly, I don't want to kind of point to next year already, but hey, look, you're already kind of getting used to without Antonio Callaway and Jordan Scarlett, and those are two guys that were probably going to move on after this year anyway. So, yeah,
And
you're right.
and there's
2008.
there's word out there that Antonio Callaway won't be back in a Florida uniform. So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
everybody can go out there and read that. It's all over Twitter right now. But update on
but
suspensions.
no one's surprised. No one's really
Nobody.
surprised. I mean, nobody's really surprised.
No. All right, Joe, you want to move on to Kentucky, man?
Let's ride.
All right. So, yep, big game. Kentucky, right, coming off a big win over South Carolina at South Carolina. Everybody was kind of pegging this South Carolina as a hot team right now, but Kentucky went in there, and I talked to
Even
South.
you,
Yeah,
even you.
I was. I admit, I was big on the South Carolina train. Um, I talked to a South Carolina friend of mine today, and he just said they just got whooped in the trenches. He said Kentucky, they came on the road, and offensive line, defensive line, they controlled the game for Kentucky. And we know already, the first 2 games, Florida's offensive line has struggled to find their way right now. So Kentucky's playing at home. They got some confidence. They're coming off a big win. They want to end this 30-year streak that Florida has over them. And eventually, hey, it is going to end. It's going to have to, as much as we don't want to say, but I don't think any of us are going to pick it right now. I don't know. We'll see where it goes this week. But Joe, this is the team. This is going to be Felipe Frank's first start on the road in a true road game. We had the start in Dallas against Michigan, and still a lot of young guys on this Gator team will be making their first true road game start.
David, when we did our preseason predictions, didn't I circle this game?
Yep.
And several people kind of laughed at me.
Yeah, some people
now,
were with you. Some people were with you, and some, yeah.
Yep. And now most people are with me. They are. This is something I want to point out, David. Kentucky's rush defense last year was number 80th in the country. 80th. Right now, number 3. Number 3. They're giving up 57 yards per game. And where's Florida struggling most at? Rushing offense.
Yep.
And Kentucky's played pretty good offenses. I mean, Southern Miss, their home opener, Southern Miss has is 74 scoring offense, 39 in pass offense, 61 in rush offense, and total offense 47, which is way better than Florida's. South Carolina, 86 scoring offense, 64 passing offense, 120th rush offense, which is worse than Florida's barely, and total offense 113, which is better than Florida's. So, the teams that, and obviously Eastern Kentucky, which is an FCS school, so they're not rated, but
which Kentucky did struggle with.
They did. The Kentucky did struggle with them. But one thing I do want to point out is Kentucky's pass defense is not very good. They are giving up almost 300 yards per game. So if there's an area that Florida can exploit, it's with Felipe Franks' arm, obviously with the wide receivers. But I do got to say, David, that third down conversion rate that we were just talking about, Kentucky's only allowed 13 first downs on 43 attempts, third down attempts. That's a scary stat. Obviously, a lot of people, including yourself, were high on South Carolina. Kentucky went into their stadium and punched them right in the mouth. Sandstorm was playing and Kentucky was winning. So, this game makes me nervous, David. It's a night game, very young team that's coming in there. It's just I'm not very confident about this game at all. I wasn't confident a couple weeks ago before the season started. I'm not right now. And it's Florida's offense against this defense that worries me. Obviously, Steven Johnson, Kentucky's quarterback, is electric. And, but I think Florida's defense will be up to the task against this Kentucky offense. Benny Snell, Kentucky's running back, he's pretty good. But I'm concerned about the offensive line, David. You just talked about it, and it makes me so nervous about this offensive line. They struggled with Tennessee Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, and Tennessee's defensive line is not very good. I worry. I really do.
Yeah, and you mentioned kind of a comparison from last year to this year, and through 3 games last year, Kentucky had given up 729 yards rushing. That was 243 yards per game. So you look at a year later, and like you said, they went to South Carolina 23-13 win to get 3-0, and as you said, third nationally in defense. They've only allowed 171 rushing yards through 3 games. That's 2.19 yards per carry, and only 1 rushing touchdown. So, yeah, I mean, Florida's the run game has been very questionable right now. And it's been trying to do the power run game. Now, does Florida get creative here and try and make some things happen in the run game as far as outside runs, get Kadarius Toney involved, Malik Davis, of course, some sweeps, maybe getting some other guys involved. Maybe this is where we see Jay Massey finally show up on the road, or, finally he makes his appearance, trying to get the ball in his hands. If Florida's going to try and run again into a teeth of a defense, I don't like the success rate that will probably come out of that. So, and especially on the road too. And Will Miles has really pointed to this, and his last year how Florida struggled besides the LSU game in the second half of that game, how they struggle running the ball compared to on the road compared to how they do it at home. Last year, Florida ran the ball much better at home than they did on the road. Well, this is going to be a first test to kind of see if they have progressed from that point last year. So, as Jim McElwain mentioned, keep tweaking things on offense today in his presser, as I mentioned earlier. Can they find something? Can they tweak something to where they can find something in this against this Kentucky defense to run on? So, the defense.
But you don't necessarily have to run, David. You take what the defense gives you. In this pass defense, obviously ranked 108th. Florida, you know what? If you got to throw the ball every single play, throw the ball every play.
Yeah, that is true. Play to what's working. So if that's what's working, of course. And going back to Kentucky, going from last year. The defense, it's been much better once Stoops took over defensive play calling last year. They only have 2 senior starters this year on defense. So, this is a defense that could be putting together the pieces of getting something this year and next year. Now we'll see. They haven't played great offenses so far. As good as high as I was on South Carolina, they were still struggling moving the ball at times. They played UC Kentucky as well, and Southern Miss. And Joe mentioned the stats there. Not great offenses, not terrible offenses. It's kind of stuck in
better than Florida's.
Right now, yeah, yeah.
But a
So,
little bit of positive news for Florida. Jordan Jones, their best linebacker, is
yeah,
probably not going to play on Saturday, which is pretty big. He's really good.
yeah, he was not listed on the depth chart that they
Yeah.
put out. So, but yeah, through the Southern Miss, Eastern Kentucky, and South Carolina games, they've only allowed 15.3 points per game. So, like I said, they'll be at home. They got the confidence. And remember, 2 years ago, it took everything for Florida to go there with Will Greer at quarterback. And as you know, that was, I think that game was before the Tennessee game that year, right?
It
It
was.
was
It
the second
was.
game of the year.
Yeah, it was
Oh, yeah,
actually the
South
week
Carolina.
before the Tennessee game.
Yep, 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 yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. So it was yeah, different kind of different scenario there, but it was a where that offense did struggle on the road there. So yeah, Joe, I think it is going to be a scary game when Florida travels to the Commonwealth.
Yeah, it's streaks don't last forever, David, as we saw last year with Tennessee in Florida. So, but 30 years is a long time. I was 1 years old when Florida lost to Kentucky last time. So, it's been a long time, and most of our viewers actually weren't even alive then. So, um, it's just like I said, I circled this game 3 weeks ago before the season even started, before I knew Florida's issues or whatever. So obviously, if that had made me nervous then, it definitely makes me nervous now. But you know, I'm of the belief that Franks is going to get confidence from that last play. I mean, it seems like this offense is really riding high off that fourth quarter. Even that drive with Brandon Powell that finished with a
Mhm.
touchdown, BP dove in. I mean that alone was a really good drive. So just the last maybe 10 minutes of the fourth quarter that we saw, hopefully can carry over. Football is a lot about momentum, and I think Florida's offense could carry that momentum against Kentucky. And I don't even care if it's an ugly game. Just get out of Lexington with a W. Forget about looking improved. I'm not worried about that at this moment, especially against a defense like this. And you know what Florida's prize will be if they beat Kentucky and Lexington? You got to play Vanderbilt the following week, and Vanderbilt's defense might be better than Kentucky's defense. So it's like I'm glad that Florida's getting a test this early. Look at the defenses Florida's offense will have played in the month of September. David, Michigan's defense, Kentucky's defense, and Vanderbilt's defense all within the month of September. That's a pretty good test for this offense, wouldn't you say?
I would definitely say I know people want to not give Vandy credit a lot of the time, but that defense has given trouble. Florida has given Florida trouble for years. It is a good defense.
They're good.
Derek Mason has that thing going.
And they're
He
going to give Alabama all they want this weekend.
think so. That's
Yep.
yeah, because
They will keep it close. I think Alabama will win that game, but I think it's going to be like a under 10 point game,
yeah, it's
single digit.
their offense hasn't hit the sink yet either. So that Vandy defense definitely can keep it close there. Um, Yeah, and another thing, and you mentioned what happens after this, and how Florida, wins or maybe wins this game. I'm kind of at the same thought. While of course, I want the offense to look good and all that stuff, but I think I agree. I want to get out of Kentucky winning this game any way possible because it's an away game, and
Yep.
then your prize is, like you said, you get to come home against Vandy, against LSU, and against A&M 3 weeks in a row. So somehow go to Lexington, get a win any way possible, and then it sets up a big home game stretch that where maybe Florida finds their stride, they have some confidence coming off the
Yep.
road, and then you get these three big home games and take advantage of those home games.
I can't speak on that enough, David. 3 weeks in a row, Florida gets a home schedule. I mean, that's unheard of. Obviously due to LSU coming back here for the flip. That's huge. And then not only that, Florida gets a bye week after the 3 game stretch. So Florida's technically home for a month if you think about it before going to Jacksonville for the face off against Georgia. So get out of this. This is essentially your last away game until November. It is because
Yeah.
obviously the Georgia game's in Jacksonville. So this is technically your last away game until November. You go into Lexington, you scrape out a win any way you can, whether it's a kickoff return for a touchdown or just something.
Another pick six. Let's go. Why not?
Exactly, a pick six. Why not make it 4 pick sixes? So you know. Anyway, we talked about improvement. We want the offense to look better against Tennessee. Vice. I'm not even worried about that, David. This is one of those games where you should just be happy with a win.
I agree, and I know it's and the reason we want to see the offense look good is because it's looked bad for so long. But I am in the mindset of go out there and get this one any way possible. I really am. So we can complain about it. Don't get me wrong, but I won't complain about a win too much. And we'll just keep here saying the same things we said this week about trying to figure some things out on offense. But at least through 3 games, you would be 2-1. You'd have a road victory, and you get the 3 straight home games.
And David, a lot of people are going to pick Kentucky to beat Florida this weekend. So going into Lexington and coming out with a win is going to make people raise an eyebrow to Florida. A lot of doubters out there right now, David, including Gator fans themselves. I tweeted this out about I'm a regular listener to Paul Feinbaum daily, and some guy from St. Augustine called in and said, I want McElwain out of Florida. He's ruining my program. After 2 games this year, we've heard all the noise. We know, a lot of people are not happy. But seriously, after you just got a huge win on Saturday night, no matter how it looked for 3 quarters, and you're going to call and say the man's ruining your program, David, he's won 20 games. Saturday night was his 20th win, and
another win at home.
And another win at home. And he's 14-3 in the SEC. 14-3. 14-3 in the SEC. There's not a lot of coaches that can say that about their conference record. Whether you want to say about the East being terrible the last 2 years, you know what? He's winning the games he should win. He's winning the games that he should win. So people like that just need to take their noise elsewhere. Let's go to Kentucky. Let's get this win. Ugly, pretty, however you want to call it. And I think a lot of the noise will go away after this week, especially on the national stage, if Florida comes out with a win.
Yep, I think so. Because like you said, Kentucky's getting a lot because it was kind of South Carolina getting the hype, and now since Kentucky has beaten them,
yep, Kentucky and Vanderbilt, and
rightfully so. Don't get me wrong, these teams deserve the credit they're getting. But now after they have beaten South Carolina, as far as the SEC East talk goes, they are a team that now that focus is shifted to Kentucky, and a lot of people are going to pick them to finally get the upset, finally get the win. A lot of that talk was 2 years ago as well. So we follow South Florida,
and obviously we need to start rooting against Georgia. In SEC games. Georgia has a big game against Mississippi State this week, and you know what? It is. And 6 months ago, David, this might have been looked at just as a game that was big for the fan bases. Now it's big for the SEC race for both sides. And David, you remember in our preseason predictions, I picked Mississippi State to finish second in the West. I did, and I stand by that. They're a heck of a team, and I think they're going to beat Georgia this weekend and prove their worth. And I think obviously if Florida goes into Kentucky, gets a win, and Georgia loses to Mississippi State, Florida's in the driver's seat again in the East. Inexplicably.
And then think about it. The very next week will be for the lead in the East between Florida and Vandy.
It will.
Vandy will probably lose to Alabama. My bad.
Well, Vandy will lose. But Florida could take a clear-cut lead because the following week after that, who plays? Georgia and Tennessee.
Yep.
So if Georgia loses to Tennessee again that week, Florida is in the driver's seat in the SEC East.
Yep.
Again, inexplicably. So we just can't explain it, but it's working.
Hey, we'll take it. All right, Joe. I'll have a bigger preview of the Kentucky game with Will Miles later on this week. That'll be Wednesday night and kind of posted Wednesday night, Thursday. So, Joe, what's going to happen when Gators travel to Lexington?
I told you, man, I was done with score predictions. No more scores. But I will give my feedback and predictions. I think the offense built a lot of confidence in that fourth quarter, man. I saw a different team in the fourth quarter than I did, the previous game and the previous 3 quarters. So I think Florida carries that over, man. And I just think that Florida offensively is good enough to overcome the deficiencies of the running game. I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit. Obviously, I think they built more trust in Franks just alone in that fourth quarter. And I think Florida's defense is kind of coming into their own as well. And I think Florida's defense is going to be a very low-scoring game. And I think Florida's defense will make a play to win an ugly game in Lexington and win it low scoring. But like I said, I don't care. Just get out of there with the W.
Yeah, kind of how I see it too. In a way, I do think this is a game better for Florida's defense as well. I do think we see more of a complete performance by them, and partly because the offense helps them out a little bit. And I'm not expecting this big. I don't expect to see what Florida did, albeit with Luke Del Rio last year. I don't expect that type of performance against Kentucky again this year. With that, Kentucky was playing awful at the time. There was no confidence. They had come off, I believe, an upset the first game of the season last year, where they lost to was it Southern Miss last year too, when they lost the first game
Yeah,
of the year? Yeah. So
yeah.
they lost that game. There was no confidence in that team, and they kind of found their stride. And I believe dang, I saw this stat today. Besides their bowl game, I think they've won 8 regular season games in a row, maybe, or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Or it's some stat like that. I have to go
yeah.
back and find it. So I'm trying to go off the top of
There
my
was
memory
actually a
here.
scenario where they could have won the East last year at the end of
Yeah,
the season.
right.
It, I think if Florida had lost to LSU and Tennessee had lost, I don't know to who, but there was like some weird scenario with like a 3-team tie took place and Kentucky would go to Atlanta. I mean that's insane.
Yeah,
That's
so
insane.
they found their stride last year. They beat
Yeah.
Louisville in the last game of the season, and granted, like I said, they got beat by Georgia Tech in the bowl game here in Jacksonville. But then they start the season outright 3-0. So yeah, it is a way. Like we said, get out of there any way possible. I don't think this is the game that offense necessarily takes off because of the defense we talked about Kentucky's bringing to the table. But it is something I think Frank's. Joe, you mentioned the DB trouble or the pass defense trouble Kentucky has right now. So maybe this is the game where like I said, I don't think Franks goes all Del Rio on Kentucky like he did last year, but where we start seeing signs of progress and consistency.
I want to point out something that happened in the press conference. I think it was Edgar Thompson asked McElwain if he felt underappreciated.
Oh yeah, I saw
And
that.
when I heard that, I was waiting for what the response was going to be. And Mac, answered quickly. He said no, but I'm not buying that, man.
Oh no.
He hears the noise, man. I mean, he's got people out there combing social media, for him, his team and stuff like that. And players pass it on to him as well. They know what's going on. And I think that McElwain is pissed off right now. I think he's coaching pissed off. I think he wants to prove everybody wrong. And I'm okay with that. And I think this is a game where he can kind of stick it in Florida's fans' faces that, are not believers of him. And I think this is a perfect game for him to go into, an environment where a lot of people don't expect him to win and get the W. He did it against LSU last year. Not many people expected Florida to go in there and win in Tiger Stadium last year, and he did. And you could tell after the game that he was kind of like wanted to flip a lot of people off. And this could be another game like that.
Yeah, Joe. Do you think there's anything? Do you think there is anything the way he's been acting lately in public and with these pressers and all that stuff? People have pointed out to him, the media has pointed out to him that he's kind of seems like Dazel, and that it was brought up today that he kind of seemed. They may have used the term out of it a little bit. I'm trying to remember, but it was
Yeah,
it was brought up by the media
it was. It
today
was.
that he's been acting different as of late.
They said it was nice to see him smile,
Yeah.
and David, like I said, he hears the noise. He hears the critique from the fans. His players tell him. His social media people tell him. I mean, and a lot of it is unwarranted, man. We've talked about this, and I've been called a McElwain apologist. But listen, if you want to criticize Nussmeier's play calling, etc., it's year 3, blah blah blah. Kevin Sumlin's been mediocre for Texas A&M for what, 6 years now? I mean, Texas A&M is a pretty storied program. I mean, they had Bear Bryant as their head coach. So, I mean, there's other programs out there that are extremely storied that are dealing with coaching problems that Florida does not have at the moment. You could be Notre Dame right now. Notre Dame has more tradition than the University of Florida does, and they got a coach right now that every time you want him to go away, he just gets this inexplicable victory that makes you want to keep him again. And there's a lot of other programs out there. Look at UCLA with Jim Mora. I mean, he goes to Memphis and lays an egg. Yeah. So there's a lot of programs out there, man, that they're jealous of Florida's problems, quote unquote. So I think a lot of people in this fan base are spoiled. You know, they got an ego that needs to get in check and go away. And a lot of me feels bad for Coach Mack and the stuff that he's going through right now, because, you know, has he done things the right way? And it's sometimes no, sometimes yes. I mean, it happens. A lot of people say that he's lost control of the program with the credit card fraud thing or whatnot. We don't know that. You know, you don't know what happened. Nobody knows. You know, you can't honestly say that he knew about it or he didn't know about it. I think that until Florida kind of derails and goes off the rails, I think we just need to pump the brakes on him right now. And I actually tweeted this out 2 weeks ago that no, fans are going to make him quit, you know, and he does. He looks dejected at times, David. Watching him in press conferences a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, he was smiling, he was joking, he was having a good time. And now it almost seems like it's a mundane task for him to answer questions about his offense every single week. And a lot of those questions are warranted, you know, and are deserved. But I think people do need to put some perspective in their opinions and kind of maybe, you know, the problem with society nowadays is everybody's got to take an extremist position. And I'm sure you can agree with that. People are either on one side of the aisle or they're on the other side of the aisle. And if you disagree with the person on the other side of the aisle, you want nothing to do with them and you hate them, and we're total enemies for the rest of our lives. Since when did we get rid of moderates? Since when did we get rid of people in the middle that can see both sides? It's the same with politics. The same with believing in our coaching staffs. We either have to take one side or the other, and basically one side is pulling you to the other and saying, if you don't choose, we're going to burn you at the stake. Since when can we just not sit in the middle and say, okay, I agree with your side, and I also agree with your side too? You know, and that's where I'm at. I agree with people with the negative comments about McElwain, but I also agree with people that believe he's done a good job. So why can't I be in the middle? And that's where I'm going to be. And if you don't like it, then you can kiss my butt. So, I mean, that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, that's where I said, you know, I've said, oh, how many times I see both sides of the argument there. So, yeah, you know, that is a lot of where Jim McElwain, it is. Yeah, I'm sure it gets old.
The same with Nussmeier. He's called bad games, but he's had good games too. You know, if you want to point out his bad games, point out the good games he's called too. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I'm just in the middle, you know, trying to be a moderate, I guess.
There we go. There we go. All right, Joe. Yeah, I mean, big game. We know it is. It feels kind of weird to call Kentucky a big game because of the recent history of Florida and heck, I mean, we mentioned 30-game win streak, but it is a big game. It is a team that's undefeated. They're 3-0. They got some confidence, and it is and if, like we said, if to silence the doubters, it is a game that McElwain must go on the road and win.
It is, and I think it'll quiet a lot of people down, David, if he goes in there and gets this win.
For sure. All right, Joe, anything else, man?
No, man. Another week, another show. Can't wait until Saturday, and obviously we'll be back with our Sunday recap and then our Monday show, hopefully back with the trio, myself and you and Bill Sykes.
Yeah, we'll apologize all that for people. It's just it's kind of hard getting everybody together with families and everything that's happening here. So, you know, when we can, we'll get all three of us together. But believe me, we're figuring it out, and we'll get all of our words out there. So for Joe, you can find Joe on Twitter at JoV_GatorsPod. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.